AI is a general technology that is accessible, powerful, and adaptable for a vast range of uses.
Europe is buzzing with political energy right now. Behind the glass walls of Brussels, in the halls of Berlin, and the corridors of Paris, decisions are being made that could reshape the future of technology, finance, and global power. The European Union is standing at one of the most critical crossroads in its history, and every move it makes is echoing around the world. If you really want to understand how these changes might affect you, your job, your freedom online, and even the price you pay for electricity, then stay with me till the end of this video. And don't forget to subscribe to EU Politics because we break down Europe's biggest stories before anyone else. Let's start with what's making the most noise right now: artificial intelligence. The EU has spent years trying to be the global leader in ethical AI regulation. They even passed the landmark Artificial Intelligence Act in 2024, the world's first comprehensive law on artificial intelligence. The idea was simple: to make sure that when AI decides something about your health, your finances, or your future, it follows strict ethical rules and transparency standards. But now, in late 2025, things are getting complicated. Reports from The Guardian say that the European Commission is quietly considering watering down or delaying key parts of that law. Why? Pressure, and not just any pressure. Major US tech giants like Meta, Google, and Microsoft are lobbying hard, claiming the law could stifle innovation. And the Trump administration in Washington is also warning that Europe's new AI rules unfairly target American companies. So the EU faces a dilemma: stand firm and risk economic tension with its biggest ally, or back off and risk losing its reputation as the world's top digital regulator. Some in Brussels argue that Europe must not blink. They say, if we let American tech dictate our policies, then Europe's dream of digital sovereignty is dead. Others say the EU is moving too fast, too hard, and that over-regulation could suffocate innovation before it even starts. It's a classic European challenge, and how to be both principled and competitive. The outcome of this fight could decide whether Europe leads the world in AI ethics or becomes just another follower of Silicon Valley. Meanwhile, something equally huge is happening in the financial world. Germany, traditionally protective of its own national regulators, is signaling it might finally support giving more power to the European Securities and Markets Authority, ESMA for short. That's a massive shift. For years, the EU has been trying to build a single unified capital market, so money can move freely from Lisbon to Helsinki as easily as it does between New York and California. But member states have resisted, afraid of losing control over their banks and markets. Now, with Berlin changing its tone, things might finally move forward. The Financial Times reported that Germany is open to granting ESMA stronger authority over cross-border financial supervision. This may sound technical, but it's actually deeply political. If ESMA gets more power, that means less fragmentation, more transparency, and potentially more investment across Europe. It could make it easier for startups in Spain to raise money from investors in Sweden, or for pension funds in the Netherlands to invest in infrastructure projects in Greece. It's one of those moves that could make Europe more globally competitive. But as always, some smaller countries worry that more centralization means losing national influence. The tension between efficiency and sovereignty never disappears in the EU, and this financial reform could reignite that debate like never before. But while the EU tries to modernize its financial system and digital laws, it's also preparing for something even bigger: expansion. Yes, enlargement is back on the table in a serious way. At a major summit in Brussels earlier this month, leaders from candidate countries, Ukraine, Moldova, Albania, and Montenegro, met with EU officials to discuss timelines for joining the bloc. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas said it clearly: a realistic path for new countries to join by 2030 exists. That's bold. If Ukraine joins, it would fundamentally alter the EU's political balance, economy, and even defense strategy. It would send a clear message to Moscow that Europe's door remains open, and that Ukraine's future is firmly tied to the West. But enlargement is messy. It's about reforming institutions, adjusting voting rules, and ensuring that the EU's budget and decision-making processes don't collapse under the weight of new members.
I'm sure we can make a deal, and I'm here to help on that. I cannot deal in the name of the European Union.
We will not be part of their inner circles because we prefer the public squares, and we will not be part of their mainstream.
Some existing states, especially Hungary under Viktor Orban, are likely to resist. They fear losing leverage as more voices join the table. Still, the momentum is growing. For many in Eastern Europe, EU membership represents not just economic opportunity, but also protection. Protection of democracy, security, and stability. So when European leaders talk about expansion by 2030, it's more than politics. It's a statement of identity. At the same time, another silent storm is brewing around climate policy. The EU has set one of the most ambitious climate goals in the world, a 90% cut in carbon emissions by 2040 compared to 1990 levels. That sounds impressive, and it is. But here's the catch: can Europe actually deliver? Many industries are already warning that the EU's climate regulations are piling up faster than companies can adapt. Farmers are protesting from France to Poland. Manufacturers say they're drowning in bureaucracy. And even French President Emmanuel Macron recently warned that too much regulation and not enough funding could kill the European project. His words, not mine. This isn't just environmental policy, it's about Europe's economic soul. Can it remain a global model for sustainability without losing competitiveness? Can it achieve climate neutrality without triggering backlash from its own citizens? These are the questions haunting every European leader right now. And with elections to the European Parliament just months away, these issues are becoming electoral weapons. Expect climate, AI, and enlargement to dominate every debate, every campaign, every headline. There's also the ongoing tension with tech companies on another front. Meta recently announced it would halt political advertising in the EU, citing transparency and regulatory uncertainty. That's huge, especially as Europe moves closer to key elections. Meta's decision means political parties and advocacy groups will have fewer ways to reach voters through platforms like Facebook and Instagram. The company says it's trying to avoid accidentally violating new EU transparency rules. Critics, however, accuse Meta of trying to pressure Brussels by showing what happens when big tech decides to step back. It's a game of power and perceptions. Who really runs the digital public square? Elected governments or private corporations? And that brings us to one of the deepest questions about Europe today. Who holds the power? Is it the national governments in Berlin, Paris, Warsaw, and Rome? Or is it the institutions in Brussels and Strasbourg? Or maybe increasingly it's the tech firms in Silicon Valley and the markets in New York and Hong Kong? The EU's identity crisis is also a power crisis. Each new law, each new directive, each new enlargement negotiation is a test of what kind of union this really is. Some observers argue that the EU is quietly becoming a geopolitical power, not by building an army but by setting global standards. Others say it's stuck in endless internal compromises, too divided to act decisively. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. But what's clear is this: every decision Europe makes right now, from how it regulates AI to how it integrates new members, will determine whether it stays relevant in the 21st century or fades into irrelevance as others move faster. Let's not forget the public mood either. Across Europe, people are tired of bureaucracy, inflation, and uncertainty. The cost of living crisis continues to bite, and populist movements are gaining traction again. In Italy, in the Netherlands, even in Germany. Many citizens feel disconnected from what happens in Brussels, believing that EU politics is something distant and elite. That disconnect is dangerous. Because when people stop believing that European democracy matters, the whole project starts to wobble. That's why communication is key, and that's why we're here to make EU politics understandable, engaging, and real. If you've watched this far, you already know this isn't just about headlines. It's about how Europe defines itself in a world where technology moves faster than law, where geopolitics can change overnight, and where economic growth depends on unity more than ever. The AI Act debate shows the EU wrestling with innovation. The financial reforms show it chasing efficiency. Enlargement shows it expanding its vision. And climate policy shows it trying to save the planet while keeping the economy alive. All these threads weave together into one story, a story about resilience, identity, and transformation. So where does Europe go from here? Expect the next few months to be filled with high-stakes negotiations. The European Commission will face immense pressure to clarify its AI position. Germany and France will need to convince others that more financial integration won't mean a loss of national control. Enlargement talks will test Europe's credibility, and the climate agenda will keep sparking protests, amendments, and endless debates. This is the messy, complex beauty of the European Union, 27 nations, one project constantly reinventing itself. And remember, every time the EU changes course, the world takes notice. From Washington to Beijing, everyone's watching how Europe manages its next move.